Good morning. Welcome to the morning meeting. I am so thrilled about our guest today, my friend Liz Powell, who I have known now for at least about a decade, and have learned so much from about government affairs, advocacy, championing causes. And we could not have someone who is more of a passionate advocate focused on empowering folks with information, with connectivity, and really just making the world a better place, frankly. Liz has a wealth of experience. She is based in DC, but also has Ohio offices. So she and her team do lots of really incredible work at the State House, as well as on the Hill and with the executive administration at both levels of government. She started her consulting firm G2G Consulting in 2007, and has had so many incredible wins, helping advance health innovations, as well as lots of wonderful causes for. Good morning, Don. Hi there. So feel free to ask Liz questions in the chat as she's chatting today. She has a wealth of experience on the Hill herself before being a lobbyist, and I am just really excited and grateful that she was able to share a little bit of time with us this morning during such a busy lame duck session. So thank you for being generous with us, Liz. We've got lots of folks on the line who are focused on making Ohio a better place for young kids, and so they are really excited to just learn more about what does the landscape look like post-election, and you couldn't have a better person than Liz to give you those insights. So as usual, we'll pause about 9:55-ish, and if folks have more questions, they can come off mute. But if you've got time sensitive stuff, throw it in the chat and our team will keep an eye on that so that we can flag it for Liz as well. We'll post this on our YouTube channel, and I'm going to stop talking and go off video here in a second so you can really learn from Liz. And I think she's got some slides that will pop up here momentarily. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate that. I have the slides up, but I want to put them in. How do you do that? I'm not seeing how to hit the
down on the bottom of the screen. There's the little slideshow button. If you go to the right next to where it's like the minus and plus zooms, that should let you make it full screen.
Usually it lets me just slideshow.
Yeah.
Play from start. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
not
you're
the
fine.
best way to start off, but
Hey, Liz, before you start, it's in that mode where it shows your notes. So in the top left, if you go to swap displays, I think it'll make it the presentation version for you. Yeah, that looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. So thank you for that warm introduction, Brittany. I really appreciate that. What I wanted to do is just give you a rundown of the elections and things to expect going forward. I used to work on Capitol Hill as a legislative director for a couple of different members of Congress and always did a lot in health and social policy work. I'm very passionate about that. So let's move on here. So election results. So we do know what happened. Trump definitely won. So we all know that. We had pretty good voter turnout, a little bit down from 2020, but it was pretty good turnout. What's interesting are the many layers behind this victory for Trump. So the gender gap definitely was not as strong as people thought it was going to be going into Election Day. Latino men backed Trump overwhelmingly, which was a huge shift because there was a 31-point advantage for Clinton back in 2016 and a 23-point advantage for Biden in 2020. So that was a big shift. But the Black vote also shifted. Black women solidly for Harris, but 10% increase among Black men for Trump. And then the rural vote, we're seeing definitely a shift in sort of where the country is, and there's tremendous power, especially with the Electoral College in the rural vote. So those numbers I think are interesting to share as well. Also, the Senate flipped, as we know, from Democratic control to Republican control by a comfortable margin. They picked up the states of Ohio, as we all know. Sherrod Brown lost. Montana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. But Democrats did retain Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So the new senators, there's 6 new Republicans and 6 new Democrats. So, and they're all listed there. So that does shape what the Senate does. If you've got a bunch of new folks, that definitely does influence how quickly you can move on things and the priorities. So in the House stayed in Republican control. there's two races. I actually didn't check this morning, but as of last night, there were still two races still up in the air, still counting. So Republicans are eking out a very small majority. And again, there's that rural shift I think is really interesting to see. And then I've listed out all the incumbents who lost. So there were a couple Democrats and Republicans who lost that were incumbents. So again, there wasn't just one way to read the election results. And then finally, I think this is interesting. So in the states and the districts where Harris won and Biden before her, Republicans won the House and Senate seats. And so I just think that's an interesting dynamic that we're seeing as well. The final thing in these many layers that are impacting the election results are the ballot initiatives. Abortion ballot initiative was big in several states. And I think the big story is ticket splitting of this election. So a lot because of these ballot initiatives, people could go to the polls and they could vote for access to abortion in their state. And then they could go vote for Trump. And then they could switch back over and vote for Sherrod. Like you could switch back and forth. And that's what we saw a lot of people doing. And not everyone, but enough that tipped the elections in one way. And there were other interesting ballot initiatives like bans on non-citizen voting. There's definitely a huge, this whole immigration issue is a huge issue. Minimum wage, even ending a diaper tax was on one of them. Like Arizona had almost 15 different ballot initiatives. So just interesting dynamics that were affecting election day results. And it also was super close. Like Senator Tammy Baldwin, who's a huge champion for women and children's issues. She's currently the chair of the Health and Human Services and Education Funding Subcommittee. And she won by just 29,000 votes in a state in Wisconsin that voted for Trump. And so it's super tight. Like it's not, in many ways, we define it as a red wave. It's Republicans controlling everything, but it was not a tsunami. I mean, it was like very little. If you think about it, it's just a little bit more. And in this country, you just have to win by a little bit. You can win by one vote and then you're in. And these two House seats that are still up in the air, they're still counting California. We're talking about 314 vote difference in one of them and 348 in the other. I think I last saw it. So your vote matters. That should definitely be a takeaway. So in Ohio, we're going to have two new senators. So Bernie Moreno obviously defeated Sherrod Brown. And it was the most expensive non-presidential race in history, $515 million. Insane amount of money. Think of all the wonderful causes that we could address with that money, but it is what it is. So now Vance is going to retire or step down so that he can become vice president, and DeWine will get to pick the person to fill those shoes. And we're hearing these names of Timken, Dolan, LaRose, who said, even Congressman Kerry. I was on a couple calls recently with some Republicans, actually Congressman Kerry, and I'm talking about they don't know what he's going to do, but that it's very important to DeWine that he pick someone who is not like a flamethrower, but someone who will get things done and work to be effective, not flashy, like a workhorse, which is very much like DeWine. So that's what he's considering. So we'll see what happens there. In the House, Sykes, Capter, Landsman all won. Very tight for Capter, very, very tight, but she pulled it out. In the State House, we have 3 new seats for Democrats in the Senate. So it's now 24 Republicans to 9 Democrats. And then they picked up 2 seats in the House. So it's 65 Republicans to 34 Democrats. And then issue 1, the ballot initiative around redistricting definitely went down. So we will continue to have the maps the way they are. So what's next for Congress? So we're going to have new chairs, just like at the state level, we'll have new chairs of committees. And what's interesting is that it's not just a shift in leadership, but it's a shift in geography, from like the state of Washington to the state of Maine, Wisconsin to West Virginia, although there's similar rural issues there, Montana to Kentucky, Vermont to Louisiana, et cetera. So I think that's interesting too. Also, there'll be women at the top, which is great. So right now we have a chair of Appropriations Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the Senate, is a woman, Patty Murray, and that will shift to Susan Collins, another woman. And then the subcommittee on health that I mentioned earlier, Tammy Baldwin is the current chair, but that will shift to Shelley Moore Capito. And so I think it's nice to see that for those of us who care about women in leadership. And the other thing is Capito, I recently met with her chief of staff just a couple weeks ago, who was very clear that right after the elections, our biggest concern is making sure, she's effective in office, but also that she doesn't have any primary challenge. So there's a lot that folks have to weigh in this position. So she does a lot on women's issues, on children's issues and stuff, but you have to just I think, be strategic in working with offices. The other interesting thing is the rule. So any new rule that came out after August 1 could be reversed by the new leadership when we get into 2025. So I know there are staff frantically looking through to see what could change as we get into 2025. There's about 29% women in office for the first time ever. We're going to have 2 Black women serving in the United States Senate. So that's exciting. And then medical professionals, there's 6 newly elected. There's a little over a dozen. There's about, I don't know, maybe 20 that are in office now, but some retired. So I like the medical professionals in Congress. I think that they get a lot of these issues that we're working on. So I think that's a good thing, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. So for the White House, some examples of policies that we think will stay versus those that are gone. So the ARPA-H program was funding a lot of exciting women's health research, and that will continue because those awards were granted, but we don't know next year what will happen. Sex as a biological variable is what SABV stands for, and that was a new requirement in defense grants. That actually came out in July, so that should stay. And then there's been $500 million spent on women's health research just over time. Each year, that's around what they've been spending. So it's not like it was some new funding allocation. So I think it will stay in that ballpark. It might go down a bit. Office of Research on Women's Health got big increases, $100 million from the Republican House version and $152 million from the Democratic Senate version of the appropriations bills for this year. So that indicates to me that there's bipartisan support for that. So, and they cover a huge range of things. So that's great. Affordable Care Act, I don't think it'll disappear, but I do think it'll get an overhaul. So there are some concerns there around access and coverage. So we will be tracking that. So what's gone? So there was a recent announcement by the White House that they were going to expand over-the-counter contraception access. That was like late October. That's going to be gone. The White House Initiative on Women's Health Research, the Gender Policy Office, they will be gone. I think that the Trump administration will do something on women's issues. Like they actually did include in their tax package when he was president before the child care tax credit. So there's some interest there. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But a lot of these entities have been proposed to be either eliminated or merged. So ARPA-H, which is that advanced research funding for health. The AHRQ is Health Research and Quality Office, and then the National Institute for Child and Human Development. So they have a proposal now to consolidate 27 different NIH institutes and centers into just 15, which would then enable them to just cut funding significantly. So there's a lot of concern there that would impact so many different things: behavioral health, mental health, physical health, so many things. And then they also would create a 5-year term limit for NIH institute directors. So this was proposed this year. They tried to include it in the House version of the funding bill for health. It's not in the Senate version. So we will have to see what happens with this. I think many of us are a bit nervous about this consolidation effort. And so we're tracking it. I don't know exactly where we stand on it now, but I know it's definitely out there. The global gag rule ban will be lifted. So, and this switches every time there's a Democrat or a Republican in office, they switch the ban. The ban is stricter under Trump. He implemented even stricter rules around any money. So that will definitely impact family planning and access just to maternal health care and those things. TSET is not to get too into the weeds, but the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Coverage program for any breakthrough devices is actually pretty limited right now. So I think that's going to be eliminated or changed in the Trump administration to close that gap between FDA approval and coverage. So that will create more access. So I actually think that's a good thing. And then there's a tax right now for small businesses that are innovating in health. Many of them aren't able to take advantage of grants because now there's a tax they have to pay back to the government once they win the grant, which doesn't make any sense. So I think that will also hopefully be eliminated in the next Congress. So for 2025, it's all about nominations. We're hearing about RFK Jr., Dr. Oz, Musk, all of these folks. So we're tracking that, and Gates, obviously. So it's all over the news. So I know you know all that's going on there. I think that the Senate, several senators are pushing back, saying they're not just going to let anyone get through. They actually will do the nomination process. So we'll see what happens next year. Executive orders will definitely be the first thing that Trump does once he's in office. And then reversal of Biden regulations, as I touched on earlier. The tax cuts expire in 2025, so that will definitely be a priority to get those. They'll do, I think, changes to them so that there could be opportunities to do, like there's opportunity zone program. There could be ways to maybe shape taxes that could benefit women and children and families. And so like I'm a big advocate on how could we create a tax cut or a tax refund or something around those areas. So I do think that there could be opportunities there. Then they have to finish the appropriations process. They were supposed to have finished it now, but since the Republicans won everything, they're going to push everything off to next year when they can control all those funding levels. So that means that there probably will be cuts. So that's something that we'll be watching. And then the president has to put out his budget proposal for the next fiscal year. And amidst all of that, they will do what's called reconciliation in the first, like right up until April 15th. They want to pass basically a budget resolution that sets the funding levels that they want. And once that's passed, then by June 15th, they're supposed to pass the actual enacting legislation. So it's a way to bundle everything together, and it's you only need a simple majority so that you can't filibuster it, you can't stop it. So since they have the numbers to do that, that's what they're going to push through. The details on that we don't know yet, but that's definitely coming, and I would expect cuts. So it's important to communicate why cuts can hurt your organization and the people you're serving in the state of Ohio. Immigration obviously is big. Tariffs, we've heard a lot about that. This new Department of Government Efficiency will cut a lot of civil service jobs and probably will cut services. So I think that's really of concern. We want to be watching for that. So staying engaged and being active is super important. Your stories really matter. I think it's the combination of stories and stats that are most compelling. And so here are the opportunities. As I said, we've got taxes. That will be the top issue. So where could we fit in improvements in social and human service, health services? How could we fit that into what they're already doing as far as their tax cut renewals, the reconciliation process around funding? Like, I think it's really important that we just be strategic and fit into what they are already doing, or sort of the train's already moving. How do we jump on instead of arguing over here for something that's just not realistic? So it's the climate we're in. So that's what we got to work with. Appropriations, as I mentioned, so CPF and CDS, those are community project funding and congressionally directed spending projects. So Sherrod Brown was very big on these. He did lots of great projects for the state. It brings money home directly to nonprofits and municipalities. We don't know if Bernie Moreno will do them. Vance did not do them because he was following in the footsteps of Portman, who also did not do them. The reps, Congressman Kerry is a great champion of these as well. We've done a lot of good work with him on some projects, and Joyce Beatty, and across the street, the state. There are members who do them. So if you have individual questions on that, I'm happy to, if you want to shoot me an email. But I think that's a real opportunity. No matter who is in the White House, who is controlling Congress, that is definitely a good funding source for nonprofits. Authorization bills, those will still happen. So there are ways to influence those. Regulatory, which means sending in letters during comment periods, really important way to shape that and make sure that they understand stories and statistics. Letters, testimony, whether it's federal level or in the state house, that's super important. You just got to keep up our voices and keep communicating. Social media is really powerful. I mean, there was this whole TikTok thing on the pain that women go through in an IUD placement. And because there were some 30,000 women posting like little videos of the pain of that process, the CDC actually changed their standard to measure pain. So social media works. It can definitely have influence. So keep that in mind. So we've got our women's health advocates if folks are interested in that. It's on our website, g2gconsulting.com. You can team up with other organizations. Obviously, Groundwork Ohio is an awesome leader to be working with, but you're not alone. There's a lot of folks out there that are trying to see how they can influence and make a difference in this new administration and with the results of these elections. So planning events, signing on to letters. I think group letters are really powerful. Like we did a letter with over 1,000 people to the House and Senate appropriators around women's health issues. And actually, I think it helped influence the funding that we got for the Office of Research on Women's Health. So there's so many examples on the state level, local level, as well as a federal level where it really does make a difference to use your voice. So hopefully that's a takeaway, and that's it. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Liz. I think it's really great to see like that long list that you just shared of ways that folks can continue to engage is so helpful. I think a lot of folks post-election are feeling overwhelmed keeping track of all the appointments and all of the changes and all of the recounts. So seeing that even amidst all of that, there are so many opportunities for us to continue engaging on the issues that we care about is really empowering. So thank you for ending on that note, especially.
Yeah, I want to
Um,
give some hope.
yeah, exactly. We did have one question in the chat from Molly Fender. Um, do you have any thoughts on some of the new appointments around what things might look, or the new congressional landscape, what things might look like for early care and education? I know your focus is obviously more in the health space, and we've got folks there
Yeah.
too.
So, Project 2025 wants to eliminate Department of Education. Linda McMahon's been nominated for Department of Education and doesn't have a background in it. So there's some real concerns there. Again, I think just stories and statistics. It's really important. And, your members of Congress care deeply about Ohio, every single one of them. I know for sure. So if you can point out the impact on Ohio, how it will impact children, families in Ohio, you can get through. And then those members of Congress can put pressure on whether it's the nomination process at that super high level or more mid or lower level. They can send letters, they can do calls. There are still things that you can do to help influence and shape that process. So at this point, I don't have any details on what the policies will be, but just know that there's mechanisms for you to influence and contribute to that.
And last week, we did a run through on doing an action alert. We've got some set up on our website, and we're looking at the child tax credit too. So I think just kind of reiterating how important it is, even if you've done the action alert or sent the letter, there's still more to do. The stories that I think everybody on this call can tell about the kids that they're serving are so impactful and really do stick with members, to underscore your point, Liz. I think if anybody wants to hop off mute, feel free. We've got 5 more minutes. You don't have to put it in the chat. We can be conversational. I know we've got 50 people on here now. I know some of you have questions. You can get political with us. It's okay.
Anything's possible. Any
Shelley
questions?
Hill, if we wanted to voice an opinion on a cabinet nomination, what's the best way to do that? This is a great question. Can Senator Moreno be contacted yet? Obviously, his office isn't entirely staffed up yet. And when will we know who DeWine? So 3 questions. How do we share an opinion on cabinet nomination? How can we contact Senator Moreno's team? And what's the timeline for DeWine's appointment to the U.S. Senate? Great
Yeah, all
questions.
good questions. So Okay, the last one, I have no idea. No one knows when he's doing that. And I think they want to see, because Trump has nominated a couple of incumbents in the House, and the House like leadership is like, stop doing that because it's so close. So, there's some angst there. And I think that they're waiting on Vance right up to the last minute so that they're sure about things. So I think that's what's going on there. Um, so Marino won't have an office. He will be sworn in on January 2nd. And then Trump is not sworn in until January 20th. So there's this little bit of a gap. So as soon as Marino is sworn in, he will have an office. So I would, I don't know if it makes sense to send it now, but definitely after January 2nd, I would. And you can write it very respectfully to him about like, this is what we're concerned about. Therefore, please, probe these issues when you are considering the nomination of whoever it is you're concerned about. I think that's totally appropriate and needed. Like, they need to hear from constituents that they're concerned about these nominations. So 100% support that. And what will happen is he will be put into a trailer in like the basement. Because they have to build out whenever, and you saw that, I think it's like 12 new folks. So what they have to do is clear out those offices, and they're forcing those people to clear out now. So between now and end of December, they're cleared out. They then start renovating the offices, and a new senator or rep can pick out like carpet and, the color of the walls, all that kind of stuff. So all that has to happen. And it won't be probably till March or April when Marino can move into his official Senate office. So just know, if you come to DC to meet them, you're going to be going into the basement and like winding your way around. It's no big deal. Just ask them. They'll have the phone number. I'm guessing they'll have the same phone number that Sherrod Brown has now. So whatever his 202-224, whatever it is, it'll be this. I'm sure it'll be the same. And then email. So he won't have his staff. That it'll take months for him to have his staff. But you can just call that number and ask for, hey, can you give me the name of the legislative assistant who manages health issues or who manages education or children's issues, like whatever your issue is. So you can get that information